The sixth round of talks between farmer unions and the government currently underway. 41 farmer leaders representing the farmer unions, while Agriculture Minister Narendra Tomar and Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, the Minister of State for Commerce, Som Prakash, represent the government. The farmers sticking to their position that any discussion between the two sides must only centre around a four-point agenda. That includes the modalities of repealing the three farm laws and a legal guarantee for a higher minimum support price. The minister has also seen sharing food with the farmer leaders during the lunch break, food that was brought in by the farmer unions. In a previous meeting, the farmers had refused food from the government and had brought their own. Today, the ministers were seen eating the langar food that was brought in by the farmers. Separately, after several incidents of telecom towers being vandalised in the state of Punjab, Reliance Jio has written to the state's Chief Minister Amrinder Singh as well as the Director General of Police. The letter, which seeks intervention in the matter, alleges that the local police is not acting against vandals or filing FIRs. The letter states that employees are not being allowed to work and essential telecom services in the state are being disrupted. Now, Prime Minister Modi has slammed the destruction of infrastructure. Inaugurating the first section of the Eastern Dedicated Freight Corridor on Tuesday, the Prime Minister said the infrastructure doesn't belong to any particular party but to citizens. Today, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has also appealed to stop the destruction of property. Take a look.
ये मानसिकता देश के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को, देश की संपत्ति को नुकसान पहुंचाने की है। हमें याद रखना चाहिए कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, ये संपत्ति किसी नेता की, किसी दल की, किसी सरकार की नहीं है। ये संपत्ति देश की है, ये संपत्ति आपकी है, देश के नागरिकों की है। इसको लगने वाली हर चोट देश के गरीब, देश के सामान्य जन को चोट है।
मैं समझता हूं कि इस पर हमारे पंजाब के किसान भाइयों को विचार करना चाहिए कि यदि किसी के द्वारा यह तोड़फोड़ की जा रही है तो तोड़फोड़ का सिलसिला बंद होना चाहिए।
So more than 30 days on, no breakthrough. Talks currently underway. We don't know whether this will end the stalemate or not. To discuss the way forward, the road ahead, we're now joined by Manpreet Badal, Punjab's Finance Minister. Mr. Badal, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. As I pointed out, sir, so far the talks between the farmer unions and the government have not yielded any result. Farmer unions insist that the laws need to be repealed. The government insisting that there is no question of a rollback, no question of repealing the laws, but acknowledging that they are willing to make amendments. Now, do you believe that a committee, which is something that the government seems to have suggested once again in the talks today, and something that the Supreme Court has also suggested, setting up an interim committee, could be a way of breaking the stalemate?
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm a very small-time minister from a very small-time state. I really don't have any locus standi to comment on, what the farmers want and what the government's position is. But when these ordinances were issued about 6 months back, our government in Punjab had actually suggested to the government of India that they must go in for stakeholder consultation. These issues must be discussed threadbare. And it didn't make sense to bring these laws, especially if your listeners would recall that about a couple of months back, there was a global hunger survey or index, and out of the 104 odd countries or 107 countries, India was 94th. Our considered opinion even then as a government was that we should not tinker with India's food security. This has stood the test of time for almost 70 odd years. And this is not really going to either benefit the farmer in any way, but that is the government of India's prerogative. And so, having said that, now that we have a situation at hand, my considered view, and this is my, it has nothing to do with what the Congress party is saying, but what I feel is that if government of India were to not hold on to prestige or ego, and if they could put these laws in abeyance for 6 months, just for 6 months, and let the government rethink and let the farmer organizations rethink. Let them educate each other, to the benefits or, what's wrong with the bill. I think that could be a way forward. And secondly, what I feel is that if the government is adamant that they're not going to withdraw it, and since this is a central legislation, then you give the states the freedom that those states which feel that this is for the benefit of farmers, let them make these laws effective. But maybe say states like Haryana and Punjab, the legislatures of these states, if they don't ratify this act, it should not be made operational in Punjab. In any case, we have rejected these bills in the State Assembly. We're actually just waiting for either the signature of the governor or the President of India. But if, as I said, if these were the two options forward, either put them in abeyance or let every state decide what is good for it and what is not.
Okay. We've discussed this previously as well, sir, when the decision of the Punjab Assembly was to try and overturn the central law by passing that resolution. It's very clear that the governor and the president will not give their assent to a central law which the current central government stands by. So in that case, what choice will you have? And then are you looking at legal recourse? Because so far that hasn't been the case.
But if you enact a legislation or a law which does not benefit the farmer, why would you go ahead with it? Well, in a country as diverse and as big as India, how can you have even an agriculture system which is uniform for the rest of India? Why trust these laws? I mean, you're actually trying to tell us that it benefits the farmer when it doesn't. We are in the business of farming for the last 100 and so many years. So why can't you just convince us or convince the kisans or why would you want to go ahead with these laws?
Okay.
I don't know if you've read these laws or if your listeners have been through the fine clauses of this law.
I have, sir.
Yeah, then 86% of Indian farmers are below 2 acres. They are in no position to bargain with any multinational or corporate or any other person.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Badal. You're saying that the power of negotiation does not rest with the small farmer, with the marginal farmer, and it will be an asymmetrical equation, an asymmetrical power equation that these laws will force the farmer into, giving the advantage to corporations, giving the advantage to multinational companies. On one hand, sir, there has been an acknowledgement on the part of you, on the part of your government, as well as the farmer organizations, that there need to be changes. In fact, farmer unions saying that, as you pointed out, repeal these laws and we're willing to sit across the table and with the consent of farmers arrive at new laws, arrive at fresh bills that will incorporate some of the changes that we've been speaking about. I mean, the APMC Act amendment has been something that we've discussed for years and years, sir. So do you believe that, or acknowledge that, yes, there is need for change? B, where do you believe that the change must come? And then perhaps there can be a middle ground arrived at to try and push that change forward. Where do you believe there is need for change today? Because there has been an acknowledgement, even on the part of the Congress, even on the part of your own government, that there are antiquated, outdated provisions of the law that need change.
Exactly. So, that is what we need to discuss with Government of India. Number one, agriculture was supposed to be a state subject. Government of India, really doesn't have the constitutional right to actually legislate on this. Market and mandis is where the price discovery takes place. If the farmer, doesn't get his produce to the mandi, that is the place where, a farmer, his daughter's getting married, somebody in his family, is sick, or maybe, he has some criminal case against him. That is the time when, he would be very vulnerable, that his produce can be actually picked up from either from his field, or he will actually sign any agreement to pick up money. And secondly, they talk about that rural development fee or any cesses which are charged on the produce when it comes to the market, that will give an advantage to the farmer. No, this is charged from the buyer. It's not charged from the farmer. The farmer never pays that. And if the state government does not have access to these funds, then how will the entire rural marketing infrastructure be maintained? So anyway, so I don't think so. This is something now. It's this is well in the past now. We are talking about how do we resolve this? And the only way you can resolve this is either you keep these laws in abeyance. We need to discuss this with the people who are the stakeholders, not with the Punjab government, but with the farmers. And B, if the states can be given a choice.
Okay, so let the states decide or put the laws in abeyance for 6 months till we arrive at some sort of a breakthrough. That's the word coming in from Manpreet Badal, the Finance Minister of Punjab. But Mr. Badal, you were talking about drawing in private investment into the dairy sector in Punjab. You were talking about drawing in private investment into the food processing sector. The government of Punjab had also, like other state governments, invited investors as part of an investor meet to try and draw in private sector investment. Do you fear that on account of the current situation that there might be hesitation, there might be apprehension, and let's be clear, private sector capital goes where it feels safe. Is there a fear that people who may have been looking at investment opportunities may put those investment opportunities on hold till there is more clarity?
Well, this is for the information of your viewers, that in the last 73 years, Punjab has never had an industrial lockout. There's never, we have not lost a single mandate where industrial workforce of Punjab has gone on strike. And this is going to be a record. When I read what happened in the Apple factory in Karnataka or what happened in Madhya Pradesh or Gurgaon, so surely, 2 or 3 days of vandalism is not going to change that. The chief minister has issued a very strict instruction to the police that the full force of the law has to be applied to those people who are indulging in vandalism or destruction of either private or government property. The fundamental duty of the government is to protect the honor of its citizen and to protect the property of its citizen. So, we are very well aware of that. We were actually caught completely unawares that somebody would want to actually vandalize a telecom tower. And believe you me, some of them which have been vandalized have been actually repaired, power has been restored, and the villagers, have actually formed now committees to actually, not the police, the villagers themselves are very aware, and they have formed committees guarding these telecom property. We are also aware that this could lead to a very serious situation. It could lead to a blackout. We have our board exams for our children coming up. We have our professionals who work out of home, and we can't afford this. And no government can afford it, and no government can tolerate this. And we have issued a very, believe you me, Punjab has a very motivated and a very professional police, one which single-handedly was able to take care of the terrorist problem in Punjab in the late 80s and early 90s. We are well up to it. And 1 week of vandalism or just 3 or 4 days is not going to change the reputation of Punjab as a destination which is not investor friendly. Even during the last 6 months, Punjab has actually received more than $500 million or 3,500 crores of investment, which is grounded in the state. In the last 4 years, 70,000 crores of investment has been grounded in the state. So there is no looking back for Punjab. My own feeling is, and the Kisan unions themselves have disassociated themselves from these vandals. And at a social level, this is not the Punjabi character, and this is not the character of the farmers of Punjab. That much I want to assure you.
Well, I'm sure that that assurance will go a long way in allaying concerns that foreign investors, domestic investors may have. But Mr. Badal, let me ask you about, since we talked about the way forward now, and we don't know whether these talks between the government and farmer unions will result in any breakthrough. But what's the impact on the ground for a state like yours, which is dependent, on large measure on agriculture, with the fact that you've now got farmers from across Punjab and Haryana sitting on the borders of Delhi for more than a month now? What's the impact on the domestic economy in the state at this point in time? You've got a big debt burden that you're dealing with as well. How do you maneuver yourself forward through this?
Well, my main concern would be evacuation of food stocks which are actually lying in Punjab. So as soon as the roads and the railways start functioning, we could start evacuating food grains from the granaries of Punjab. I'm also concerned that sometimes these roadblocks, because Punjab is a frontline state, and also in case you have to go to Jammu and Kashmir, the only way you can go to Jammu and Kashmir. I hope this doesn't create problems for the military, and because the supplies have to be sent. That is my concern. But my main concern is not just about the economy, but the concern is about the morale. If a set of people feel aggrieved and they are not listened to, and sometimes genuine. I mean, believe me, the government can't be right all the time. They were not right when the Notebandi took place. They were not right when they brought in a design of GST which really didn't suit India. And there are many others which I don't want to speak, because then it becomes a political brinkmanship. But in this case, if they were to just climb back, and as a minister or as a representative of the people, my main concern is the morale of the people. They should not feel that whatever they're protesting for is not being listened to. Government is like a Mai Baap, and just like a Mai Baap is concerned about its his children, government should be concerned about the population.
Mr. Badal, you started by saying that you have no locus standi in the matter, but you do, sir. The protests are widespread across the state of Punjab. Your government is in power there. What are you trying to do on the part of the government in Punjab, to try and arrive at a solution, to try and provide answers? We saw a meeting of your Chief Minister, Mr. Amrinder Singh, with the Home Minister, Amit Shah. Is there likely to be any more dialogue between your state government as well as the central leadership to try and work out a middle path?
Well, we can only advise the government of India, but it's up to them to whether they would listen to advice or not. Prior to farmers actually coming to Delhi, they were actually sitting in Dharna for 43 days within the state of Punjab. And if in the last 30 days, if these Kisans have sat very peacefully on the borders of Delhi, there is no reason why they would indulge in any kind of vandalism within the state of Punjab. I don't know whether you've been, watching these clips all over on the Haryana side of the border, but I have seen young girls actually saying that ever since these guys from Punjab came, we feel so safe. We can actually walk around, even at midnight, prior to which, we could not even get out of our houses after 7 o'clock. So if these are the set of people who people around Delhi feel safe, why would these people indulge in hooliganism within their own state? It's impossible to believe. And my own feeling is that the vandals, whoever's done this to the mobile or telephone property, they're actually someone, who are actually bringing this whole protest into disrepute, and the government of Punjab. And as I said, we can only advise the government of India. But if they don't listen to advice, then it is, between the protesters and the government of India. We are as keen to resolve this.
Let's talk.
Worried people are sitting in their lakhs in this, bitter cold. Why would they be sitting there? if they didn't have a reason to protest.
Yes, I'm not at all disputing the fact that farmers feel that they have legitimate cause for concern and legitimate grievances that they would like the government to address. And the government, by acknowledging that amendments can be moved, seems to also be acknowledging the fact that there are shortcomings in the laws that have been moved. But Mr. Badal, let me ask you about some of the changes that are now being considered or some of the amendments that are being proposed. For instance, on the issue of MSP, the government has said that the current mechanism will continue as is. There is no plan to change the MSP mechanism. As far as the business of private mandis are concerned, the government is now saying that it's willing to consider bringing in an amendment to ensure that there's a level playing field between the APMC as well as the private mandi. So the current law, which says that there will be no taxes, no license required, and so on and so forth, changes could be brought in there to provide that level playing field. Do you believe that that could be an answer to the concerns that farmers have raised?
I wish they could have just, considered this earlier. I mean, if government has actually come around to this, why would they wait for a month or 2 months or 3 months to come up with the same solution?
Okay. So, as they say, perhaps
Punjab farm laws say.
Well,
so if they, they have now come around to this position after 1 month. But what's the big deal? Thinking about
as I've asked you. Well, it is a decision for the government to make, so I cannot speak for the government, but this is what we're given to understand. These are the issues, in the words of the Agriculture Minister, that the government could look at bringing in amendments. That was the last draft that was shared with the farmer unions, which was, of course, rejected by the farmer unions before today's meeting. But, Mr. Badal, as you pointed out, you have been trying to draw in investment into the state. You've tried to diversify the economy of the state away from being so largely dependent on agriculture, of diversifying it away from being primarily an agrarian economy. What do you believe the state will now need to focus on to ensure that that diversification does in fact fructify, does in fact realize?
Well, Shereen, please don't start me on this. But because, Punjab has to be given a chance. In 1998, the same BJP government, when in power, they gave special concessions to our immediate neighbors. Not that we resented. It was Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal, and Uttarakhand. They were given a special category status. And anybody setting up any investment in these states was exempt from income tax as well as central excise. Whatever industry was left in Punjab actually got sucked, out of Punjab into these states. And prior to 98, between 84 and say 94 or something, 10 years, we had a decade where Punjab was destabilized by Pakistan. And there was this, we lost about 36,000 odd, citizens of Punjab, 8,000 policemen was martyred. So instead of actually helping Punjab, out of the tailspin, we get into a situation, how would investment come into Punjab without, with the concessions to our immediate neighbors? And in the last 30 years, and I'm saying this with a lot of responsibility, Punjab has not been given any central project, or any central government investments have not come into Punjab, except for a very small investment called the rail coach factory, which is at Kapurthala. So where is this chance of Punjab to diversify even its economy, let alone agriculture? Now, just recently, just about 3 weeks back, maybe you would have read that there was this huge investments coming from the United Arab Emirates to set up food parks, about 7 billion. They've given one, 3 food parks were to be set up in India. They've given one to Madhya Pradesh, one to Gujarat, of course. I don't know which is the third. why was Punjab not considered, even though Punjab was the front runner? They have withheld, believe you me, you can't have such a small heart. They have withheld the rural development fee, RDF, which is a statutory tax on food grains, being levied for the last 60 years. And Punjab, 3%, it's at 3%, we're entitled to 1,200 crores. Food department has actually withheld that sum from Punjab. It's very difficult to believe or trust anybody to say that we will give you your MSP just on a word. When they're denying Punjab the statutory taxes which FCI or the food department were to give to the state of Punjab. They've written us a letter that you explain where the funds were used to, where you used up the fund. It's like me asking you or you asking me that I'm paying income tax to you or to the government. Please explain where my income tax has gone to. You have no right to ask. That's the prerogative of the government. So Punjab was actually never given a chance to either diversify its economy or even its agriculture. And every year, Department of Food writes letters to us and they set targets that this is the production target which Punjab will have to achieve. So in newspapers, in the press, they talk about diversification, but Government of India tells us that these are the targets you must achieve. Whether we put a wheat seed in the ground or a maize or rice, you just tell us. The Kisan would perfectly do whatever has to be done. If you ask us to produce dairy, we will do that. But Government of India must do some hand-holding and tell the Kisan. And if any changes have to be brought about, then these changes have to be organic. They can't be abrupt.
Okay.
I have, thousands
all right,
and thousands
Mr. Badal,
of people leaving Punjab and, going all over the world, emigrating, just because,
right.
apart from agriculture, we have nothing else. And you take this away from us today, then what is left for Punjab?
Okay. Well, in your words, to conclude, either the central government should look at putting the current laws in abeyance for 6 months to be able to have wider consultations with all stakeholders and perhaps look at amendments, or give state governments the right to implement the central law or continue as is. Manpreet Badal, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Thanks very much for your time.
May I add a caveat to this?
Please, go ahead.
In no way, talking on behalf of the state government or from the farmers. But as someone who has been in public life for 25 years in Punjab, I think this could be an opening.
All right, sir. Let's see if that is indeed the way things progress. But appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Thanks very much for your time. We will take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment.
MCX IPO